Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to this webinar on reading and comprehension, where we will be particularly focusing on the main point of the passage, or the primary purpose of the passage, or the main idea of the passage. So I can see that some of you are still joining. So hi Tarang, hi Ayman. I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it correctly or not. Um, I would love to hear back a hello from you. Hi Naveen, hi Vedehi, hi Ruhul, hi, this is Undra, Pooja, Nanret, and Shogata. So a very, very warm welcome to all of you guys. Okay, so the fact that we are all here gathered today, and some of you have been with me in the entire webinar series, you know that we've already gone through a couple of webinars on reading and comprehension, CR, and sentence correction as well. So today's agenda actually is going to be mostly focusing on understanding the main idea of the passage. And the thing is not that we are going to um, understand the main idea of the passage just because we have to answer those primary purpose questions. If you are able to understand the main point of the passage that the author is trying to convey, you can actually answer a lot more other questions correctly as well. And we are going to look at that today. So, guys, hi Nandred from Nigeria. Great. So this is such a nice feeling, that sitting here in India and connecting to people across the globe. Very good feeling, very warm feeling. So once again, all of you who have just joined, because I can see some of you have just joined, uh, welcome to this webinar, guys. Let me set the agenda. Before that, very, very quickly, I think a lot of you already know who I am, but for those of you who have just joined us for the first time, my name is Sunita, and I am the lead course architect of GMATVERBAL, the verbal course. I have tons of teaching experience, which has helped me develop this course, which has helped me address the pain points of students. And the result is the course that you get to see at GMATViz. I'm going to share later down the line, I'm going to share the link to the free trial version of the course for those of you who are interested in looking at it. But let us straight away go down to what we are going to do today. All right, very, very important, because I'm sure most of you are here so that yeah, you can learn what we need to learn today. See, in the exam, you're likely to get about 3 to 4 passages. All right, and of these 3 to 4 passages, at least 3 of the passages will have the primary purpose question. Okay, so that is definitely one of the reasons why we are having this webinar. 3 out of your 12 to 13 questions from a particular area definitely warrants learning. But as I said a little while back, understanding the main point of the passage is important, not only to answer the primary purpose questions, but also to answer those questions where they ask you, okay, which of the following is the author most likely to agree with or disagree with, and things like that. So 70% of the questions are based on the author's opinion. So what we're going to do today is we are first going to talk about how to read in the most effective manner. Now, this is very important. The main point, unlike some other questions, the answer of the main point question is not written anywhere per se. Okay. So there has to be a certain way of reading the passage so that when you finish reading it, you actually know what the author's purpose was. So we're going to talk about how to read in the most effective, most efficient manner. We're going to talk about how to summarize each paragraph, because without summarizing each paragraph, it's going to be a little difficult summarizing the entire passage. And then we're going to put together the para summaries to reach the main point. And of course, in the process, we're going to solve some 700 plus level primary purpose questions as well. So let me see if you guys have any queries here. Let me just, a little late in the day, but let me just quickly ask, am I clearly audible to all of you? I know it's a little late. I've already started speaking. So hopefully everything is clear and I'm audible to all of you. Guys, some of you face problems regarding, you're not able to see the fonts properly. So I've adjusted the fonts of the slides, but in case you find a problem, You could try readjusting your screen resolution. Hi, Vedehi. Thank you, Vedehi. So, Vedehi is from India, Hyderabad, down south. Okay. I am in the eastern part of India, guys. So, just okay. Let me now not bore you with my chitter chatter. So, let me get started straight away. Okay. What is the main point? Now, I'm just going to do a very, very quick recap, guys. Okay. We all know what is the main point. It's actually the central idea or the core theme or the topic that the author wants to convey in the passage. It's the reason why the author has written that passage. Okay. That's the main point of the passage. And when the author is trying to write the main point, and when you're trying to choose a correct answer choice for the main point, what you have to keep in mind is the correct answer choice will have these three characteristics. One, obviously, it's going to be a single sentence summary of the entire passage. So it's not going to focus only on one particular area of the passage. It's going to express the intent of the full passage. It's not going to cover one single idea or one single paragraph or one single example. All right. And most definitely, you will find that the correct answer choice does not contain any specific detail that is kind of given in the passage. So the correct main point answer choice will definitely have these three characteristics. Now, I'm going to demonstrate this, but just to give you a brief idea about what we are going to do today is, when we talk about how to derive the main point, and as I said earlier, it's not written somewhere, this is the main point, then we have to understand how the author develops the argument in the passage, okay? So let's say the author has a motive behind writing an article, and that motive is to obviously convey a certain message. If the author wants to convey a certain message, how is the author going to do it? So that particular message would need building up. So the author would discuss different aspects related to that particular message, that particular main idea. And then the author might dedicate different paragraphs to cover different aspects of that, the main point. So in para one, maybe the author would introduce the topic and then elaborate on it in the next para, or contrast it, and so on and so forth. So the idea is you need to summarize each para and then use the para summaries to converge into the main idea. All right. So main idea is nothing else but it's the mapping of the passage which leads us to the para summary, and the para summaries help us to derive the main idea. So I'm going to demonstrate this in 3 passages separately today. So just let me know. I'm going to put up a poll, guys. Hi Anshul, hi Anil, hi Anupam. Let me know how many of you are excited, guys. I mean, the question is, are you excited? See, if you're not excited to learn something new or to look at something in a different manner, half the objective of the program gets killed. Nice. That's nice to know that all of you are excited. Okay, guys. And in case you see a passage which you've done before, worry not, because again, the point is not that whether you get the question correct or not. The point is to learn how to reach that correct answer. Okay. So what we're going to do, and this I have discussed in the session in the last weekend, we are going to follow the involved and evolved reading approach. What the approach is, you will realize. I'm going to demonstrate it. But for now, here's the passage for you. I want you to read the passage, okay? And here's what I want each of you to do. I want you to write down the answer to a question. The question is, what is the primary purpose of this passage? So you're going to write the answer in your own words, guys, okay? You are going to write the answer in your own words, and you're going to start putting the answer in the chat box. Then after that, I'm going to bring up the question for you. All right? I'm not going to read out all the answer choices. I just want to understand how many of you are reading it correctly or deriving the correct main point. And this is also for you to realize, did you get it right? Okay. So guys, how much time do you think I should give you to read this passage and write down the main point, the main idea, the primary purpose of the question? And please write it in a proper sentence, the kind of sentences you would find in the question and answer set. So how much time do you guys want me to give you to read this paragraph, these 2 paragraphs, and write down the main point, the main idea, the primary purpose. Do let me know in the chat box, guys, before I set the timer. How much time do you guys want me to give you? So Gaurav says 3 minutes to read and write down the main idea. Yes, the others? Come on, guys. Gaurav, if you're the same Gaurav, I hope you have been trying the involved and evolved method. Undra also believes 3 minutes should do it. I'd like to have a few more votes, guys, where he also believes 3 minutes. So I guess I'm going to take that as Nandret also says, okay, 3 minutes, your time starts now. I want you to write down the main point summary and post it in the chat box the minute you're done. Okay, great. So nice to see you again, Gaurav. Then great. Your time starts now, guys. I'm going to mute myself in the meantime. 3 minutes. Get started. Thirty seconds left, guys. So, Anshul, I want you to write a proper sentence. Okay, all of you guys, whenever there is a question on what is the primary purpose of the author, so the primary purpose will always contain a verb. Say, for example, the primary purpose of the author is to discuss XYZ. The primary purpose of the author is to reject XYZ. So, I want you to write a proper sentence. What you have written, Anshul, is just one sort of title, and that doesn't give me a clue. Is the author trying to present the origin, reject the origin, trace the origin? So please use a proper sentence to write down your main point summaries. Okay. Okay. The time is anyways up. I think I spent it speaking. So I'll just keep a quick lookout for all your summaries. I am sure you're going to start posting it soon. So Anshul has written origin of women's inclusion in US politics. Mm-hmm. So that means the author is trying to find out when the women started getting included in politics. Is that the idea? Okay. Gaurav says primary purpose is to assess impact of women's involvement in the politics. Nandrit says the author was trying to talk about the origin of women's participation. So, all right, origin means the author is trying to find out when the women started to participate in politics. All right, guys, I'm waiting for some more of you to post your answers, and then I'm going to bring on the question so that in retrospect we can compare what you thought was correct. Manushi is saying the author is examining the viewpoints on the women origin in politics with examples. Okay. Yes, guys. Remember the characteristics of the main point, correct answer choice. It must cover the entire passage. It should not contain unnecessary details, and it should definitely not be relegated to one particular idea. Thank you, Anshul. So the author is per Anshul, the author is arguing against the belief that women's involvement in politics started post Civil War. Uh, okay, not bad. Good, good. Um, Undra says primary purpose of the author is to discuss the difference between women and men's inclusion in politics and the history of women's inclusion in US politics. Rajat says the author is contrasting to most historians. Author suggests that women were part of politics. Rajat, good. Where he says author is talking about where women stand in terms of politics, how much they are included. Good. That's also pretty close. Naveen, okay. Quite close. Great, guys. So most of you seem to have got the broad idea of what the author is saying. Now, here's the thing. If you look at each of the choices that are out there, contrasted, discussed, argued, assessed, examined, these are different words used to indicate the purpose. And I don't know, but I don't know about those of you present today, but a lot of students I meet and I take training of, they say that they often get confused with these kind of words, assess or examine or evaluate or argue. Anupam says author is critically analyzing the woman's role into, so I think that will be in the party politics. Good, Anupam, very well phrased. Great, guys. So here I am now going to bring up the question. Here's the question. You have exactly 45 seconds to answer this question because already you have formed the main idea, right? Look at the main point that you have written down, match it with what is given here, and let's see if that works. The time starts now, 45 seconds it is. I'm going to bring up the poll for that. Up, guys. I'm going to count five and then I'm going to end the polls. So you have to put in your answers in that five count. Five, four, three, two, and one. Okay, let's look at the poll results. 6% of you believe A is the correct answer. Okay, 50% of you, whoa, believe B is the correct answer. 18% of you believe C is the correct answer. None of you like D. And 25% of you believe E is the correct answer. Now, guys, you will be shocked when I disclose the results of this question, okay? But here's the thing. Today, we are on a mission to understand where we go wrong when we are answering such questions, right? Where do we go wrong when we are answering these main point questions? I have heard a lot of people say that, oh, I understood the passage perfectly, but I don't know why I choose the main point as a wrong. I always get my main point answers wrong. So today, in this particular passage, we are going to talk about that. Each of you, I'm sure, has written down your main point in your own words, right? And some of it I have also read out. And as I said earlier, by and large, a lot of you are correct. However, we'll see how and where you have gone wrong. Clear? So what I'm going to do next, pay attention. But before that, I would just like to give you guys a glimpse of what we teach students about some of these, what we call confusing words. I mean, look at these: examine, establish, present, analyze, evaluate, to name a few. Some others are challenge, reject, trace, qualify, words like those, okay? And some of you have used the words assess, critically examine, critically analyze. So what is the difference between these words, or are they all the same? So at GMAT Wiz, what I've done is we have kind of drawn a distinction between some words which look similar, but they are definitely not carrying the same meaning. They can be distinguished, okay? So we are talking about words which confuse us, words which look similar, seem to have the same meaning, but actually may not be the same. So when you read words like describe and analyze and argue and establish, um, they kind of don't present so much of a different thing. Maybe you might find something different between analyze and argue, but not between describe and argue. So let's see. These are words which have distinguishable meanings. All right. Okay. So what we've done at GMAT Wiz is we've created these groups, and under each group we have categorized words which carry mostly the same meaning. So, for example, group one has words which more or less mean the same thing. Describe, if the author is trying to describe or explain or discuss or present, all of them to a large extent mean the same thing. But then, if the author is trying to evaluate and assess and examine and analyze, there is a nuanced difference between group one and group two words. So there is a difference between explain and evaluate, or discuss and examine, or discuss and analyze. Then you have group three, where you have these words like challenge and question and argue and contest and criticize. And then you have group four. Okay. So these are some of the groupings that we have done based on our research about what words confuse what students. So wherein lies the confusion actually? You'll find the confusion is rarely between words of the same group. For example, you will not be confused between describe and explain. You will not be confused between challenge and question, or establish and prove. But you might be confused between, discuss and evaluate. You might be confused between evaluate and challenge. You might be confused between discuss and establish. So the confusion is between one group, the words of one group, and the words of another group. All right. So there is a factor that differentiates the words in each of these groups, and here are the differentiating factors. This is what we have kind of understood from our examination of the questions that have these words. So whenever the words like describe, explain, discuss, present are used, the author is mostly, the intention is to provide details and explanations, but the author does not really disagree or agree with anything here. That's not the motive of the author, okay, to agree with something or to disagree with something. It's mostly to just present a lot of details, a lot of explanations about something. It could be very well a very instructive way of just giving you information. However, when it comes to group two words, evaluate, assess, examine, a lot of you have used the correct answer choice as E, which contains the word evaluate. Some of you have chosen the word which contains examine. All right. So clearly, you definitely thought that the author was doing something different. The author was not just giving some detail, but the author was also trying to draw a conclusion. And you're right. When we use these words, the author is usually providing two sides of the coin, and then the author's own conclusion is always there. All right, so that's the major difference between these two groups: the presence of the author's deductions, and the absence of those deductions. Group 3 words are very clear. Here, the author does not agree with something, or the author is trying to express doubts about something, and therefore we use these words. If the author is trying to assert his belief or trying to remove the doubt from some belief, then we use words like, my bad, assert, establish, and prove. So this is one small video lesson that we have in the GMAT Viz course, and similar such small things are there to help you along with your reading and comprehension. Okay. All right. So let me now move towards how we are going to read the passage. Now, a lot of you were there with me in the previous session where we discussed involved and evolved reading. Those of you who were not present, you can see how that particular method of reading works. Okay. This particular passage isn't really very difficult, to be honest. I have deliberately chosen a passage which is not very difficult to understand, so that I can demonstrate how to go about identifying the main idea. So if you will notice that this entire paragraph has about 3 sentences. So you have one sentence from here to here. You have sentence 2 which starts from here till here, and then you have third sentence from here to here. So the entire thing is wrapped up in 3 sentences. That's all. Okay. So when you are going through each of these sentences, the idea will be to understand the what of every sentence. What is it trying to say? Who is trying to say? And why are they trying to say it? Why is the author providing it? So the 3 W's form the basis of your reading. And here I go. I'm also going to show you how you can make notes. But before that, let me offer a disclaimer. You don't have to make notes. I don't make notes when I solve. But then when you're learning this involved and evolved method of reading, if you are one of those who tends to forget what you read, who feels that you are overburdened with information, then you can kind of jot down a few things to unburden your brain and carry on with the understanding of the passage. I'll show you how to do it. So let's say I start reading the first line. The fields of antebellum. Now, antebellum, I don't know what it is, but here they have provided me with the information that antebellum is basically pre-Civil War. So whatever Civil War refers to, it's the period before the pre-Civil War. Ante in Latin means before, bellum actually means war. So you have antebellum, post-bellum. All right. So the fields of this pre-Civil War political history, all right. And as I go along, I kind of use abbreviations. And women's history, okay. So these 2 fields of history of that particular period use separate sources and focus on separate issues. Very simple sentence. In my mind's eye, if I'm not writing it down, in my mind, I am kind of summarizing that, okay, sources and focus of pre-Civil War political history and women's history are different. Again, I have written this in a proper sentence for the benefit of you guys. But you don't have to write it in such a nicely formed manner. All you need to just write down is maybe S and F, of pre-CW, political history and women history are different. If you just write that much and leave it, just short forms, abbreviations, shorthand, and it's unique to everybody, right? You need to understand what you're writing. So that's what the first sentence says, and you've unburdened your mind. Great. The second sentence we start reading, and you will notice I break and read my sentences a lot because I don't reread the sentence. Political historian. So now my brain is aligning it with the previous sentence. Okay, we talked about 2 fields of history. Now the author is singling out the discussion of one particular field. Let's see. Earlier, the author mentioned separate sources and focus. Maybe the author is going to talk about those different sources and that different focus. Political historians examining sources such as voting records, newspapers, and politicians' writings. Now, these are details. I'm not going to jot down these details, but when I read these 3 things, what leaps to my mind is these are all publicly available documents, right? So I'm thinking to myself, I'm summarizing to myself the crux that political historians, they used, okay, these public documents. Remember, we are trying to align with this. And they focused on the emergence in the 1840s of a new American political nation. So, okay, maybe since we are talking about pre-Civil War, at that time, maybe some new political nation was forming, and these political historians focused on that. Okay. And the sentence doesn't end there. So you need to break the sentence. So your sentence breaks here. Okay. All right. And then after that, we are given this transition word, and since. Again, at GMAT we pay a lot of attention to transition words because they help you weave together the argument. So the author here is saying, because women were neither voters nor politicians, so we can infer that in the antebellum period, women were not allowed to vote. They did not become politicians. So because they did not do either of these two things, they received little discussion where? Probably in political history, because that's what the context is saying. So what I jot down, again, if you're writing down on paper, or if you're noting it in your mind, political historians source public docs, focus on politics, but not on women. That's all you need to write. That's all you need to jot down. Women's historians, meanwhile. So again, meanwhile is another transition word here. Have shown little interest, no interest in the subject of party politics. Okay, so political historians interested in politics, American political nation, okay, in public documents, but not in women. Here we have women's historians showing no interest, almost no interest in party politics. Instead, so another transition word here, drawing on personal papers. Okay, so they were mostly about public documents. These people are looking at personal papers. What kind of personal papers are we looking at? Wills, records of female associations. Okay, this is detailed to illuminate women's domestic lives. Reform and moral reform activities, women's rights movement. So these women historians focused on all these docs. All right, so I'm going to write down women historians, personal docs. Look at the difference. Focus on women's personal movements. Okay, so focus on politics, focus on personal, not on politics, not on politics, not on women. Okay, this is running parallel. All right, and if I have to now connect all the dots, if I have to summarize this paragraph, how I'm going to do it, just see. So we are saying that political historians and women historians, they have something in common and they have something that is not common. What is common to them? Neither of them discuss women and politics together. So political historians, so I'm thinking to myself, political historians, politics, not women, and women historians, I'm thinking they focus on women, not on politics. So when you have this kind of thing, this kind of thinking, if you can do this, now you can summarize. Okay, the paragraph, both political historians and women's historians leave out one aspect of history. You can write this in detail also. They are leaving out women and politics together and focusing only on one particular point. And therefore, what happens is very little is written about women and politics together. Now, this is my own words. You don't have to write such a long sentence, guys. This can also just be your summary notation. Okay, I have written the summary for your benefit, for you to broaden your horizons, to think like this, but your summary can just be this small notation bit. Do let me know if this is clear to all of you. All right, I'll reset the poll and ask the question, guys. Do let me know if this is helpful. If this is helpful, if this is clear to you. Okay, and once again, let me give the caveat or disclaimer that you don't have to write so much. That portion in the box is good enough. Use symbols, use short forms, use abbreviations, but have a very clear thought process. You don't need to revisit this paragraph to answer any question. Great. So I'm going a little slow here. Now we're going to do the same thing for the next paragraph. So here goes. The start of the paragraph is however, and therefore it is very important that before you move on, you align it with the summary of the previous paragraph. So basically your however is continuing here. Okay. You're basically saying, oh, all right, despite the fact that neither of these two people talk much about politics and women together. So despite that, however, most historians, now the author is not segregating political historians or women's historians. Note that now he's clubbed all of them and then says majority of them have underestimated. Underestimate means not drawn a correct idea, right? That's the meaning of underestimated. So most historians have not drawn a correct idea about what? Extent and significance. Extent means scope, I think. Significance means importance. So they have not drawn the correct idea about the scope and importance of what? Women's political allegiance in the antebellum period. Now, I may know what is allegiance, I may not know. Again, at GMATVERBAL, we teach you that if you don't know the meaning of a particular word, wait for the context to give you clues. It will. If the test maker wants you to understand the meaning of that word, it will give you contextual clues. I'll show you how. So let's say right now you don't know what that word allegiance means. So you're thinking, all right, the author believes, so here we have the author's opinion. Okay, the however indicates the contrast, and the author's opinion is majority of the historians have downplayed, my bad, women's role in politics, women's political role, or women's political something. All right. And then the author gives an example. Now, whenever you have these kind of examples cited, think like this, that you very often you get these questions. What is the purpose of the example there? Or the author mentions so and so example in order to. That is also in a way a purpose question, guys. So right away establish the context there and then. All right, so the author believes majority of the historians have not got a correct idea of women's political whatever in the antebellum period. And for proving that, the author is giving an example. All right. So you assign the relationship between sentences. Again, what are you doing? You're doing the what? You're doing the who. Sorry, you're doing the why. For example, in the presidential election campaigns of 1840s, Virginia Whig Party strove to win allegiance of Virginia's women. If a party is trying to win the allegiance of somebody, what can the word allegiance mean at best? Maybe the word support. Okay. So here you get the context to understand we're talking about underestimating the importance of women's political support and hence political role in the antebellum period. And to prove that the historians underestimated, the author is giving us an example where a certain party tried to win the support of the women by inviting these women to rallies and speeches. Okay. So these women were invited to the political rallies. Remember, women were not voters. And it stands to reason why were they then invited if they were not going to vote? Okay. Let's read ahead. And this is how you keep connecting the information, information that you have already read. According to Whig propaganda, let's say you don't know what is propaganda, but it's something to do with the Whig party. Women who turned out at the party's rallies. So these women were invited, and there were some women who turned out at these rallies. What did they do? They gathered information, and this information enabled these women to mold party loyal families. So these women would come to the, I'm literally imagining it as I'm reading it. So these women would come to the party rally. They themselves were not voters, but they would gather information, they would listen to the speeches, they would go home, and they would probably talk about the speech in front of their families and try to make their families become loyal to that party, maybe. So these women gathered information, These women reminded men of moral values that went beyond party loyalty, and these women conferred moral standing on the party. So these women actually had such a scope of impact. I mean, remember, we are trying to give an example to show that historians did not get their importance in political allegiance, their importance in politics correct, right? They underestimated it. And here the author is telling us, see, they came to party rallies, they gathered information, they converted their families to become party loyal, they reminded men of moral values that went beyond party loyalty, they gave the party a moral kind of outlook. All right, they did so many things for politics, even though they were not voters, they were not politicians. So this is trying to tell us, the author is trying to support. So here we had the author's conclusion actually, and this example here is trying to support that conclusion. Okay, so the author gives an example, and then the author continues by saying that Virginia Democrats, so we had Virginia Whig Party and now we have Virginia Democrats, probably another party of Virginia, in response to what? To whatever this party was doing, right? That means because the Virginia Whig Party was calling these women, the Virginia Democrats also began to make similar appeals to women. They also called women, and therefore we have it that by mid 1850s, women in the rituals of party politics had become something common. But most historians have not captured that commonplace occurrence. All right. And we are also told that the ideology that justified the inclusion of women, that ideology had been assimilated. In other words, probably, Democrats had also started to follow that. So I will just write that an example is given to support the author's opinion, and the example shows how women played a big role in politics. That means the summary of this paragraph is, although women played an important role, so from this paragraph, we are getting this. Okay, from this paragraph. Although we are getting because of the however here. Most historians have downplayed that role. This is what this paragraph is saying. Okay, the crux. So, guys, once again, let me ask all of you, are you clear with this? I know a lot of you have understood it correctly, but I don't think a lot of you have understood it exactly as precisely as we have now. And though this passage might seem very simple to you, most of you got this question wrong. All right. So therefore, although you read it correctly, you didn't read it correctly enough. You just got a broad understanding of the passage. You just got a broad understanding of the passage, guys. So some of you have marked as no. My question was, have you understood what I have explained in the second paragraph? If you haven't, guys, please go ahead and ask me questions. Please ask your questions. I'll wait. Please, those of you who said you haven't understood this clearly, please ask what you haven't understood. I'll be glad to answer. So as I was saying earlier, that you have to be very precise with reading and comprehension. Otherwise, you're going to make mistakes in the exam. I'm sure a lot of you have already taken the GMAT. Maybe you are retakers or you're preparing for the first time, but have solved some of these OG questions. You have faced this problem. So guys, I don't see any questions. Let me put up the poll once again. Guys, are you clear? Are you clear with the second paragraph? Are you clear with the second paragraph? Okay, cool. There is a question coming up here. I think somebody has posted a question. Okay, Gaurav says, the passage usually of this length. No, Gaurav, the length of the passage is never fixed. This particular passage was of this length only. I have not taken a small part of it. So this particular passage had 2 paragraphs only. It's an official passage. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to show you how to put together these 2 para summaries. So we have, from the first paragraph, we have summarized that in the antebellum period, both public historians and women historians, they did not discuss women in politics. All right. they discussed either politics or women, but not both the things. This was the summary from the first para. Then the summary from the second para was, although women played an important role in politics in the antebellum period, most historians have downplayed that role. They have underestimated the women's extent and significance in women's political allegiance. They have underestimated women's political allegiance or support. Now, how I am going to derive the main point? See, from the first para, what is very important is, so we are talking about antebellum period. These two people left out one aspect, right? And what was that aspect? Women and politics together. And then we are told that although women played an important role, most historians downplay that role. So these two segments I'm going to put together. I'm going to say, okay, in the antebellum period, different historians have focused differently. Instead of saying left out one and accepted the other, this is how I'm thinking. They focused on different aspects of women's political engagement. But now we are coming, so this part is coming from here. This part was mostly from here. But by and large, we're talking about majority of the historians, they have downplayed that role. So different historians have downplayed that role, comes from the second paragraph. And that is how we are reaching our main idea summary. Again, the whole thing can be done in your mind, but you train yourself to do it gradually, bit by bit. All right. You don't have to write so much stuff, guys. Again, I'm saying use short forms, use shorthand, but the methodology of deriving the main point remains the same. All right. So the main idea is, the main purpose of the author is to basically point out that most historians have got women's political role in the antebellum period wrong. Correct? That's the primary purpose. Now let us go to the answer choice. So I am going to show you how. So this is our understanding of the primary purpose. I've brought it forward here. And how I am going to examine each answer choice. But before that, let me mention how many of you had chosen. So 6% of you had chosen A, 50% of you have chosen B, 18% had chosen C, my bad, sorry, none of you chose D, and 25% of you chose E. Let's see which one is correct. So you'll notice again the primary purpose will contain the verb portion. This is the verb, the purpose portion, and the context of the purpose. So we are going to divide and read our sentences bit by bit. One of the mistakes that we do is when we are trying to identify the correct answer, without understanding the meaning of the sentence, we jump to the conclusion that this is the correct answer just because the words match. All right. And I think a lot of you fell prey to that particular habit. You read the answer choice without understanding the exact meaning of that answer choice. You marked it as correct. Let's see how. So the word is examine. Now, is the author examining anything? I'm not very happy with the word examine. Why not? Does the author, if you remember, the author, the examine word belongs to the second group that we discussed. Examine, evaluate, analyze, assess, which means the author is trying to look at both sides of some argument, both sides, and then giving his conclusion. But here we don't have any two sides being presented, okay? We just have that this is what they discuss. So the author here is not pointing out how much of the historians that they say is correct and how much is incorrect. The author is not providing us the two different views of these historians as such. So we can't use the word examine particularly here. He's not trying to examine anything. So I'm not very happy with examine. I'll just put a question mark on it. Examine the tactics. Tactics means strategy of antebellum political parties with regard to women. Is the author trying to understand the strategy? Is the author trying to analyze the strategy used by antebellum political parties with regards to women? No, that is just about the example. In the example, we are talking about the strategy used by Whig Party, by Democrat Party, right? But that is not the main idea. We call it, this answer choice is limited in scope. And of course, examine is not the word I would use for what the author is trying to do here. The author just tells us what historians do in different fields and then straight away tells us that they are wrong. The author does not present both the sides of the argument. The author does not tell us, oh, why the historians are underestimating. The author just says they do that. There is no examination, there is no analysis. So A is out. Okay. Come to B. Establish. Remember, the word establish means prove something. So proving something is a very strong word. It means something was not well established, it was not proved, and the author is overriding all other concerns and trying to prove that. Is the author trying to prove anything? Not really. Second, is the author trying to prove the effect of women's involvement in politics? What is the effect of women's involvement? Three verbs mentioned. The effect of women's involvement was they gathered information to mold party loyal families. They reminded men of this moral values and they conferred moral standing. This is the only place that the author is discussing the effect of women's involvement. But is that the main purpose? Guys, tell me, is the main purpose to prove that women had this effect? I'm going to bring up a poll for that. Is the main purpose to prove that women had effect in politics? Or is the purpose to prove or to kind of point out that historians underestimated the significance? So is the purpose to prove the effect of women's involvement? No. That's a very one short line. 50% of you have marked this, although a lot of you have understood it well. See the difference that your understanding of the passage can have on choosing the correct answer. All right. So the author is not trying to prove that women really had a lot of effect. The author here is trying to point out that, look, women were involved, but most historians did not take them seriously, did not correctly estimate their involvement. And therefore, thank you for your response, guys. B is out for obvious reasons. Okay. Present. Now, present is a very innocent word, and I'm going to leave it for the moment. A deficiency in the study of, so deficiency is basically a shortcoming, right? A gap. And I'm asking myself, is there a gap that the author is trying to point or present? Well, the author does say that historians had not drawn the correct estimate. So that could be a deficiency in the study of these historians. Particular period could be referring to antebellum. So this vouches. So if I look at my, if I compare it to my main point, okay, antebellum period, historical period, particular historical period, okay, match. Deficiency, downplayed that role, okay, I can match with this. Present, just saying it out or pointing out. So I'm going to hold on to C for the moment. Okay, I cannot eliminate it. I don't usually eliminate something until and unless I have full faith in it. So right now in C, I really don't see, I don't find a reason to eliminate, but I will only select it when I have eliminated the others. So let me move to D. Analyze. Again, I'm saying, for analysis, the author would provide the pros and cons, the yeses and the nos, and the ups and the downs, and the backs and the forths. So definitely the author is not trying to analyze anything, first of all. Secondly, is he analyzing the methodology in two different fields? Absolutely not. So definitely that's out. Evaluate. Now, I've already pointed out that if the author is not trying to examine, definitely the author is not trying to evaluate something. Remember, in the evaluate CR questions, what do? You try to point out whether the conclusion is to be believed or not to be believed. Is the author trying to point out whether the historians are to be believed and not to be believed? Please answer my question. Is the author pointing out? Is the author pointing out whether the historians are to be believed or not to be believed? Is the author pointing that out? Whether the historians are to be believed or not to be believed? He's not pointing that out. He's outrightly telling you they have drawn up a wrong estimate. And that's it. Thank you, guys. So you see, ask the right questions, have the right understanding, you will be able to rule out the incorrect choices. And therefore, the correct answer is C. Following close on the heels of this question is another question from the same passage, guys. You've already read the passage, you've already derived the main point. I'm going to give you 1 minute to solve this second question of the same passage. So, Rohan, you can have a main point which is generic, or you can have a main point which is using particular terms. I mean, instead of the word deficiency, it can use the term underestimation and all, but you have to keep a very broad mind. The time starts now, guys. 1 minute. All right. I'm going to count 5, guys. Please put in your answer choices if you haven't already done so. So here goes 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'll be a little quick in my analysis of this question. We have 2 more passages to go. So the fight is clearly between C and E. 10% each for A, B, and D, but 40% for C and 30% for E. Very close call. So I'm just going to take up one each choice, but I'll focus more on C and E. So let's see. The question is asking the author of the passage would be likely to agree with which statement regarding most historians. So the only statement that the author offers is this statement, right? That they have got women's role wrong. So that means this part. By and large, most historians have downplayed that role. This is what the author is accusing the historians about. And directly C says that they means the most historians have incorrectly assumed. So incorrectly assumed, not correctly estimated, correct, that women's party loyalty plays a small role. So they were wrong. They have downplayed that role. And C absolutely captures that. In E, they have overlooked the role. Well, they have underestimated, but not exactly overlooked or ignored it totally. However, that's not the reason why E is incorrect. E says they have overlooked the role that women's political activities played. So far, good. Look at this part. Is this correct, guys? Have they overlooked the role women played in women's rights movement? Yes, guys? Have they overlooked the role women played in women's rights movements? Answer me. Have they overlooked the role women's? No. 30% of you mark this. E. Read answer choices properly, guys. Although I'm glad that 30% of you have got the answer right, I think the discussion that we had just before this, when we understood what the correct main point was that helped you answer this correctly. I'm assuming that without being arrogant about it. So C is the correct answer, guys, and E is not. The others I'll quickly discuss because some of you have chosen that. They have failed. Failed is a very strong word when you compare it to underestimated. They have failed to contrast the roles. Is the author saying that most historians have not properly or sufficiently compared the different roles? No. The accusation is not of incorrect comparison. The accusation is of underestimation. So A is out. Okay. A is out. They have failed, again, that word failed to see that, to fail to see what? Political propaganda. So advocating and involvement is just a modifier. So they have failed to see what? They have failed to see that political propaganda did not reflect the reality. Have they failed to see that? No. They have not just failed to see the propaganda. They have failed to draw correct estimate of whatever women's involvement was. So B is also out. B is too narrow. Okay. C is the correct answer. They have misinterpreted. 10% of you mark D. Misinterpretation and underestimation are definitely not the same thing. Also, they have not misinterpreted the description of women's involvement. They have not misinterpreted it. They have not correctly drawn the extent and significance or importance of women's political involvement. So D is also out. The correct answer is C. So guys, bottom line is this method works. Anupam, is A clear to you? Do let me know, guys, if all of this is clear so far. Please tell me if everything is clear. Take a moment, let this sink in, so that then we can go to the next. Great. So guys, coming up next is, a lot of you might be thinking, okay, what if we don't have 2 separate paragraphs or 3 separate paragraphs? What if we have a one huge chunk of a paragraph? How do we summarize then? I'll show you how to summarize then. You're welcome, Anupam. So let me bring up a paragraph. But before that, the key difference that the factor that made the key, the difference in choosing the correct answer after reading the passage and choosing the incorrect answer after reading the passage is what? Reading speed versus comprehension speed. A lot of you said 3 minutes would be enough to read the passage and identify the primary purpose. Probably those 3 minutes you might have rushed to just quickly read it and write down the correct the primary purpose. All right, but reading time, if you take a little more time to have a proper, clear, crystal clear understanding of the passage, you might reduce the time that you are taking on the question and get it correct as well. All right, so involved and evolved reading basically focuses on understanding what the author is trying to tell you through the passage. You break the sentences into small chunks. That's what I've been doing. You ask yourself the what and the who and the why. You keep relating back sentences. Okay, keep relating back to what information you've already read, and you therefore try to understand what the author is trying to tell you. You use transition words and conjunctions, which we did. We use the words since and meanwhile and however and for example and so on and so forth to understand how the author was building the argument. All of that helped us to summarize the paragraph and therefore put together the passage. Okay. And at GMATViz, we teach you how to build each of these skills in small portions. I've shown you one example of confusing words. Similarly, we teach you where to pause, how to take care of words that you don't understand, how to kind of understand the opinions where we are talking about opinions, and if you're talking about facts, differentiate the author's opinion from the other's opinion, understand the main intention of the paragraph. So we help you build this skill bit by bit, step by step. We have dedicated around more than 10 hours, if you really look at this timing here, to just this skill builder of how to read better. And then we move on to showing you how to derive the purpose of the paragraph. All right. So small things go a long way, teaching you how to read better. Here's the passage I was talking about. It's a single paragraph passage, and I want you to answer this question. So you will read the passage, guys. Don't cheat on time. You read the passage, first write down the main idea, and then choose the answer choice. Okay? Do this. I'm going to give you, this is the shorter version if you compare it to the previous one. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes for this. 3.5 minutes actually, because you also got to solve that question. The time starts now, guys. And let me see, do I have any questions? So Bharat is asking a good question here. What is the target timing? Look, Bharat, for a 350 word passage, you could take somewhere between 4 minutes to 4.5 minutes. Slightly longer passage, about 4.5 to 5.5 minutes. You save time on the questions. So if you have a 5 question passage, you dedicate about 5 to 5.5 minutes to reading the passage, and in the remaining minutes or 4.5 minutes, you solve those 5 questions. That means you take less than a minute to solve those questions, and it does work that way. It does work. You can try it out on your own. All right, guys, your time starts now. I'm going to mute myself and bring up the polls. But do it in that order. First, read the paragraph, write down the summary that you think you have understood, and then match it with the options there. All right, guys, your time is up. And if you haven't already put in the answer choices, please do so. I'm going to count 5 and then I'm going to take down the answers. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So the polls tell me that 10% of you believe A is the correct answer. Okay. And then 20% of you believe B is the correct answer. A huge 50% of you believe C is the correct answer, and 10% each for D and E. So C is very clearly the winner, but is C the correct answer? Okay. Now, I'm not going to read this passage in detail, but I'll show you how to read it, or rather, how to summarize such a kind of passage. All right, I'll show you how. So let's get started, guys. Hold on to your questions. Now, I have already divided the passage into sections. How have I done that? I'll take you back here. What you can do when you have a single chunk is wherever you see there is a change in idea. It could be a shift in the idea, it could be the addition of a new idea. You consider that to be a new point. For example, here we have from here till here, the author is talking about a particular thing. And then but acts as a transition word to show there is a shift in ideas. All right. And then that ends here. So this is, I could think of this as point 1. I could think of this as point 2. Then again, you have skeptics also argue. So you have an addition here. I could think of this as point 3, you know. And then again, finally, I have here, finally, some scientists argue. So I'm thinking of this as point 4. All right. That means I have 1 point starting from although till that ago, because the author is not changing anything there. Then but shows a shift, and after that shift but, you have, just similar ideas put down there. So let's see how we can divide this. Let me go forward. Now, what this portion says, I'm going to read the first line carefully because a lot of you have got this question wrong. Although many lines of evidence, so basically we're saying although evidence indicate, what does evidence indicate? So this is the author's opinion, right? Birds evolved from theropod dinosaurs. Okay, this is what the author believes, that there is evidence that birds evolved from certain kinds of dinosaurs. And then the author is saying some scientists are not convinced with that. So author is supporting the theory, but the scientists are not. And then there is a line given telling us what these scientists believe. They argue. So let's call this argument 1. They are arguing about the timing of the appearance of theropods relative to the oldest known bird fossils. And the summary of it here is the author believes there is evidence to suggest birds came from theropod dinosaurs, but some scientists disagree. And then the author is quoting the reason for disagreement. Okay, you may not write down everything here, but this bit, this part, okay, and reason, this much is enough. Evidence suggests birds from TD. Some scientists disagree, and why they disagree. That's it. This bit is saying that. Okay. Post that, as I told you earlier, the author is showing a shift. But investigators have now uncovered. So the author is trying to go against what the scientists are arguing, right? Scientists have argued that theropods came much later, as suggested by older fossils. But investigators, so the author is countering the first argument, right? The author is saying, but there are bones of TD dating to the time of the earliest known, and they have been found now. And therefore, the author's opinion is, even if the fossil was not there, it does not mean the fossil does not exist. So, argument 1 was offered here, and the author is countering argument 1 here. So, understand what is happening. Author believes in a theory, scientists don't. Argument 1 of scientist given, author cutting down that argument. Okay. Then the next part offers another argument of people who don't believe. That means scientists who don't believe, skeptics. Another reason for disagreement is given, and the author again cuts down that. So argument 2 is offered, and then the author is giving opinion to reject that argument. Then finally, another argument of scientists given, another reason for disagreement given, argument 3, and the author again saying that that particular argument does not necessarily hold true. We neither can confirm to that nor believe, falsify that. So what is happening here at every stage is we begin with the author supporting a theory. So if I were to shorten it, author, okay, author supports, okay, a theory. Scientists reject this theory, okay. Scientists arguments, and then we have authors counter arguments, right? This is happening throughout the passage. So if I have to really look at a very simple motive here, the author is trying to tell us that the scientists are not right. So the author is rejecting the various arguments offered by the disbelieving scientists. Okay, and a lot of you have got this question wrong, guys. So I want you to think about it a bit. And first think about it and then answer me. Anupam, you don't have to stay to the technicality. You think about the turns, you think about the motive here, right from the first sentence. Don't get stuck in technicalities, use short forms, simplify them. So guys, let me know if this is clear to you, how I arrived at the primary purpose here. Remember, nobody is going to test your knowledge of fused clavicles and theropod dinosaurs or some such things. They are trying to see how you have learned to build your argument. See, in GMAT, at GMAT Wiz, we first teach you how to read a single sentence. Then we teach you, so sentence correction is the first in the order of learning. Then we take you to CR, that is critical reasoning. We show you how to build small arguments. And if you really look at this paragraph, it's a bigger argument, right? The author is building a bigger argument. The author is offering premise and counter premises, and then finally reaching a conclusion. All right. So you put your SC skills, your CR skills into use in the RC. Great, guys. So now, I want all of you to copy this summary. And I think I'm going to bring back the question because a lot of you, I don't know, some of you got it right, some of you did not. Here's the question again, and I'm going to bring up the polls again for you. So if you want, you can revise your answer choice. Go ahead, guys. 30 seconds. All right. So I'm just going to compare notes with the previous polls. I'm going to end the polls now. Put in your answer choices, guys. I'm ending it now. Okay. if I compare the polls, so this time around, nobody has gone for A. Earlier it was 10%. Only 8% have gone for B as compared to 20% earlier. 50% of you had marked C. Now none of you have gone for C. That's the difference a correct understanding has, guys. All right. 33% of you have chosen D as opposed to 10% earlier. But earlier, only 10% of you had marked E. Now 58%. Majority of you have got E as the answer, which is the correct answer. I'll point out how D is not the correct answer. So let us go back. Remember, the correct answer has to match with author rejecting, that is turning down various arguments offered by disbelieving scientists. 3 points. Okay, now let's see the primary purpose. Is the author trying to compare anything here? No. So second time around, all of you understood that, and therefore A you marked as incorrect. The author is not trying to compare anything. There are, ask yourself, are there two hypotheses? No, there is only one hypothesis. Birds evolved from this. And scientists are saying they don't agree with that. But we are not told what the scientists really believe. So there are no two hypotheses offered anywhere, and therefore A is out. First, 20% of you had chosen B. So I'm just going to write down the comparison here. Earlier, 10% for A, later 0%. For B, earlier it was 20%, and now it was only 8%. Suggest revision. Is the author suggesting revisions anywhere, that you have to revise the theory? No. The author believes in the standard theory. Here, the author says there is evidence to indicate that this theory is correct. So B is absolutely out of scope. He's not suggesting any revisions here. Okay. So those of you who still persisted with B, see what you're missing. Earlier, 50% of you marked C, guys. This is the turning point. And C is not correct. The author is not evaluating. The author is not trying to tell us whether the fossil evidence is useful or not useful. That's the author is using the fossil evidence angle to reject the argument. But the author's main idea is not to verify whether the fossil evidence is good or not. So that's out. D. Is the author challenging the theory, guys? All of you, answer me. I'll put up this question. 33% of you still mark this. Please ask yourself, is the author challenging any theory? Is the author saying that some theory is wrong? And what is that theory? Look at this. The theory is birds evolved from TD. Is the author challenging this theory? The author is actually saying evidence indicates that this theory is true. So D is not the answer, guys. D is not the answer. Okay. Correct answer is E. Respond to criticism. In what way? The author rejects. So we are not getting the exact word, mind it. We won't. Respond to criticism, yes. Arguments offered by disbelieving scientists, we can call that criticism. Response, the rejection can be a response. So criticism of which theory? That birds came from TD. Yes, that's exactly what the author is doing. So second time around, earlier just 10% of you had marked this. Now after our understanding, 58% if you mark this. So please learn to read in the involved and evolved manner, guys. Redistribute your time. Instead of devoting majority of the time to the answer choices, devote majority of the time to reading the passage properly, to getting a crystal clear understanding of the passage. Okay? All right. So I'm going to bring up the next. Here's the last of the passages of today's session, guys. Get started. I'm going to give you again 3.5 minutes. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. So 3 minutes for reading the passage and 45 seconds to answer that particular question. Get started, guys. I'm going to mute myself and bring up the polls. All right, guys, your time is up. So I want you to start putting in your polls. And I'm just going to quickly count 5 before I end the polls. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So I'm going to end the poll now. All right, let's see what the polls tell us. So 33% of you believe the correct answer is B. None of you have gone for A this time. 11% of you believe C is the correct answer. 33% again believe in D. So it seems B and D are running neck to neck. And then there's a huge chunk in E as well, 22%. So let's see who is correct. I'll briefly indulge in the involved reading to show you how we arrive at the main point, and then we're going to discuss it. So again here, see, some of you, I've been getting a kind of response in the chat that this is, like Anupam was saying earlier, that this is too technical a passage, the earlier one. The issue is nobody's testing you for your knowledge of technicality, but you are being tested for your ability to connect information, right? So you try to connect what you understand by that given statement instead of focusing on the technical terms and the jargon. So for example, here in this paragraph, if you don't know the meaning of propensity, don't worry. Okay, just think that something of truck, barter and exchange. Now if you don't understand what is truck, if you think of the truck as the truck which carries the transportation, uh, can't help it, but think of barter and exchange. So we're talking about exchange, and Adam Smith, economist, talking about exchange. So this exchange was the foundation of commerce. You don't recognize barter, forget it. You don't recognize truck, forget it. You don't recognize propensity, forget it. But you do understand that we're talking about Adam Smith believing that this exchange was the foundation of commerce. What is commerce? Business. Okay, trade, business, commerce. All right. So Adam Smith believed that exchange or barter was the very essence of business. And this, again, the truck, barter, and exchange was also a given quality of human nature. So it was in the nature of humans to exchange. It's not only the nature of humans to exchange, it is also the foundation of business. And this human nature to truck, barter, and exchange is driven by individual desire. So this entire sentence, the first sentence, is about Smith believing that business was driven by self-interest of individuals. All right. And we continue. Smith's view that. So what is Smith's view? Here we have it that Smith believed. So I'm just going to underline the main ideas. Smith, okay, asserted that barter and exchange was foundation of commerce and was a quality of human nature. All right. And this quality of human nature, that is the truck, barter, and exchange, was driven by desire. Right? That's the bottom line. Smith's view, which view that self-interest dominated business. Okay. So Smith believed that business was the entire. Remember, the author Smith is saying that exchange was driven by individual desire, and here he's saying self-interest dominated business. So he thinks that this individual desire for self-interest, that pushed business, and this business emerged in early modern England. So this view, Smith's view, has had tremendous effect. So this is the view. I'll just segregate. This portion from here till here is the view, and this is the connection you have to make. Smith's view has had tremendous effect on how such relations. What relations? Such relations means business relations have been perceived. So basically we are saying Smith's view, okay? So Smith's view was business driven by self-interest. And this view has impacted how people view business relations. See how I've simplified it down. Today it is assumed, for instance, so we are going to be given an example of how Smith's view has had an impact on how the business relations are perceived today. Today, people believe that business relations weakened the spirit of cooperation. Okay, that's the crux. Example of the above impact is given. Okay, and the example is typical belief is business relations discouraged cooperation and give rise to self-interest. So all in all, this paragraph is saying Smith's views have greatly, I'm using the word colored the belief. Colored means negatively impact. But that's what we are saying here. That Smith's views have negatively impacted the way people think about business, right? And they think that businesses give rise to self-interest, big businesses break up communities. So the entire paragraph is simply telling us how Smith's views have affected the way we see business relations. The next paragraph starts with, however, so despite the fact that Smith's views have colored our views, the author is saying such a view. Which view? We're talking about the view here now. We go back, this view. The however is against this view. However, such a view fails to take into account the language that people used at that time to express their understanding of business relations. And that language was all about trust and contracts and credit. It was not about self-interest. So the first sentence here says that author believes that the typical view overlooks the use of language of trust and credit. And I've kind of just jotted down some description. You need not. You know, most of these businesses will run on credit, will run on promises, or plain dealing and keeping promises and so on and so forth. And the main idea comes here. Individual profit and solvency were important. So what the author is doing here is the author is acknowledging that it is important to make profits. It is important to keep the business solvent or profitable or afloat. But the big but here, neither could be achieved without the trust and cooperation. So the author is running counter to Smith's, to the typical view. All right. And the author here is saying self-interest could not be achieved without trusting others. Thus, business relations actually strengthen the bonds, okay? Actually created bonds. So the author in this paragraph is saying, however, in reality, business relations brought communities together. Okay. So if we put together those, from the first paragraph, we have it that Smith's views colored the beliefs about business relations, how the business relations engender self-interest and break up communities. This was the first paragraph. Second paragraph tells us, in reality, business relations brought communities together. So if we put these two together, we are saying although Smith's views were something, the reality is something else. So Smith's views is about breaking up communities. All right, the reality is brought communities together. So I'm kind of amalgamating the two synopsis of the two paragraphs and arriving at this. Do let me know if this is clear, guys. I'm going to reset the poll. Do let me know if the process is clear to you. If you're still not following the process, you're making a mistake, guys. A lot of you have not followed the process, which is why a lot of you have got the question wrong. You can keep trying to read fast, but I'm telling you the only path to success, and I'm saying this with great confidence because I've tried n number of methodologies before reaching this conclusion. Nothing works except this. So here goes. Just to remind you what you had marked, 33% went for B, 11% for C, 33% for D, and 22% for E. Let's see. So our main idea was, although Smith's views were saying something, the reality was saying the opposite, correct? So that is the primary purpose of the author, to show that Smith's views okay, were not the correct thing. All right. Is he criticizing a theory of human nature? No. So nobody's marked this absolutely out. Is the author evaluating? Once again, what is the author evaluating here? Is the author trying to tell us, trying to prove whether the people are correct or incorrect? The author is not saying in any one place, the author is not giving any information about supporting the view. The author is directly opposing the view, right? So evaluating is the wrong choice of word. One, is the author evaluating the impact of a particular economist on modern theories? Where are we talking about modern theories? Where are the theories of economic history? Look at the kind of distortion there is. Okay, so this is also out. Just in once, the first paragraph, a little bit we are talking about how businesses were given rise by the self-interest, but not the entire passage. So B is out. Chronicling means laying down date wise. Is the author writing down date wise what happened in the early history of credit? It's not about the history of credit, guys. It's about how uh, Smith's view colored the opinions of people and what the reality really was. So C is also out. Reconsidering accepted ideas. Well, I ask myself, are there any accepted ideas here? Yes, this is the accepted idea, right? This here is the accepted idea. This year, public perception is the accepted idea. Is the author reconsidering? Yes, the author is definitely telling us the perception is different in reality. About the history of business relations, to be honest, I was a little thrown off by this word history here. I thought, where is the history of business relations? I mean, yeah, he does talk about how the business came up in the beginning, but that's about it. So I kind of held on to D. I didn't mark it straight away as the answer when I solved this question. Then I went to E. Explaining the decline. Is the author giving you explanations about how the cooperation declined? No. There's one last sentence in each of the paragraphs. The first sentence says, um, Adam Smith believed that business destroyed cooperation, and the author believes that business relations established cooperation. They're not explaining the decline here. So E is also out. Therefore, the correct answer that was left to me, although I didn't like the word history there, it was not how I visualized it, but that was the one that stuck closest. And that's the correct answer. Guys, let me know if this is clear to you. Is this clear to all of you? Hmm. I want each of you to really see where you are going wrong. Okay, it's not necessary that all of you are making the same mistakes, but maybe you're not reading the passage properly. Maybe you're not drawing the para summaries properly. Maybe you're not reading the answer choice properly. Maybe you're ignoring some words. Okay, maybe you're making certain assumptions in the answer choice. So it could be any number of these reasons. Here's another question related to the same passage. Your time starts now. You guys, time up. I'm going to count 5. It's a very simple question actually. We're talking about the author of the passage, what the author of the passage believes about the historians whose views have been influenced by Adam Smith. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. My. Let me end the polls. 60% of you believe A is the correct answer. 20% believe it's B. And 20% believe it's E. Guys, can you tell me in the chat box what was the view of the economic historians? Okay, so the question stem is asking us what? So Anupam, if you're reading slowly, that's okay. You can improve your reading speed with comprehension if you practice reading a lot. Like I would suggest read articles from different areas. Okay, areas that you're not too comfortable included. Yes, guys. So let's read the question stem. I think a lot of you did not get the question stem. It can be inferred that author of the passage believes that, okay, historians whose views have been influenced by Adam Smith have failed to examine. So the question is, what did the economic historians fail to see? Right? Now, where are economic historians mentioned? Nowhere. But who are the ones whose views have been influenced by Adam Smith? Here, this part. What is the view? Development of business relations weakened the spirit of cooperation and encouraged individualism and betterment. And then the author says such a view. Such a view means this view fails to account for the language that people used to express their understanding of business. All right. 60% of you have marked A, guys. How can you mark A? Did these economic historians fail to see the power of business relations to shape moral values, to shape this? Yes, guys. Ask yourselves, are the historians being accused of failing to see the power of business relations to shape moral values and beliefs? Which moral values and beliefs? Are you assuming cooperation is moral values, moral belief? Please remember, the author is accusing those historians of failing to look at the language, failing to consider the language people used. So I'm going to ask you this question. In A, A is telling us that the economic historians failed to observe the power of business relations. Did they fail to understand the power of business relations? What is the author accusing them? The author is saying they failed to account for the language. Clearly, where language, where moral values. Okay. So A is not the correct answer. A is out. Distortion of the given information that cooperation and you're assuming cooperation and self-interest is some moral values and beliefs. In any case, the author is clearly telling us they fail to account for the language. So you look for an option which talks about they fail to understand the language that people used for business. Okay, and therefore the correct answer is actually E. 60% of you marked A, 20% of you marked B. Did they fail to see the significance of human nature in shaping social structure? No, absolutely not. Nobody marked C and D, and they are not the answer. Correct answer is E. The author believes that the historians failed to see the actual language used by people to refer to their business dealings. Such a simple question, actually, guys. So I don't think you're focusing on the passage properly. Do let me know if you have any questions here. Yes, Anupam, you're right. And it's very clear. I mean, I didn't get why so many people marked that wrong. So, guys, any queries? That brings us to the end of this session. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to I had already kind of posted it earlier at the head of the chat box, but I'm going to post it in the chat once again. The link to the free trial version of the course, guys, I've posted it, and I'm also posting the link that you can use to schedule a free call with our experts to talk about anything under the sun related to GMAT. All right. Any queries that you have, I'm there for the next few minutes, guys. Do let me know how you liked all the verbal webinars in this entire series that we were running for the last few weeks. Do let me know how whether you found it beneficial. Did it help you? If it did, in what way? Do let me know now. I would love to hear from you guys, because this is the last of the webinars, the verbal webinars in that series. Do let me know. No, Anupam, don't worry. For each of the questions that you got incorrect, the actual learning is to see what you missed. Okay. In fact, I would say that getting questions incorrect early on in your preparation is a good indication of the fact that you're learning early on what mistakes you're making. But this will be beneficial only if you're paying attention to those mistakes. Very often what I find students doing is they look at, they solve a question, if they get it incorrect, then only they bother to go through the solution. If they get it correct, they don't even bother, and that is a great opportunity lost. So I think Bharat, what happens sometimes, they overcomplicate stuff. The question was very clearly saying the author believes that they failed in what. So you look out for, okay, what did they fail in? They failed in understanding the language. They failed to understand how the language that was being used to understand business relations. They ignored that. All right. So what the test maker does is uses the similar language in incorrect choices. All right. Just putting in the word power of business relation, putting in the word human nature, putting in the word economic development, putting in the word cooperation. That doesn't work. You have to totally revolutionize your approach to verbal, guys. You have to understand what you read. You cannot solve it in a rush. You cannot rush through the passage. You cannot rush through a sentence. You cannot rush through CR. You cannot rush. So, what stands to reason is, first, get the technique properly. If you want to participate in a race, you first have to learn how to run properly, and then you can't time yourself. First you learn that, the rest will fall in place. I have had so many students coming and telling me, literally very, very grateful, that initially they used to rush through the passage, and then inevitably they would take more time on the answer choices. Now when they have slowed down and they are understanding the passage, they take much less time on the questions. So they may not be saving the overall time taken, but they are definitely saving on they are definitely increasing their accuracy. I don't see any queries. So guys, you can get in touch with us at those credentials as well. Okay, guys. So I don't see any other queries. You can ask me anything you want if you do want to ask. Thank you. Otherwise, guys, so I have some names that I can see at my end. Thank you, Vedehi, Devdatta, Ruhul, Taro, Pranav, Undra, Gaurav, Pooja, Vipin, Anupam. Then I have Bharat, Naveen, Rajat, Anshul, Manushi, Nanret, Anil. Thank you so much, guys, for participating so freely, so interactively. Thank you. You're welcome, Vedehi. Most welcome for that. I'm just so glad that. Welcome, Emmanuel. I'm just so glad, guys. That's believe it or not, this is when I really feel happy when I hear back from you, and even if you have progressed from one degree to another, it makes me happy that I am able to help you. You're most welcome, all of you, Preeti. Yes, Anupam. Each of us needs to pitch in to make this place a better place to live in. So, if it is to help you understand verbal and thereby achieve your goals, absolutely, why not? So, it was a great experience, guys, this last few weeks. Some of you have been through the journey with me uh, in every webinar. So, thank you very, very much for making the webinar series a success. I've got some very good reviews from it. Thank you so much, guys. And all the very best for your preparation. See you around soon, guys. If you have any queries, anything, as I said earlier, you can definitely talk to our strategy experts. You can set up a call at Calendly. And if you would like to take a sneak peek into our course, the link to the free trial version is also out there for you. So thank you. Have a good day if you've just started your day, and otherwise, a very good night to all of you. Anupam, I think you'll be able to get a recording of it on YouTube. Just type involved and evolved reading and GMAT whiz, you'll get it. I'm the only one who takes those sessions, so you'll get it. All right. But I have tried to replicate the involved and evolved reading in this session as well. Not in so many words, but I have definitely uh, read every paragraph that way, every passage that way. Okay, guys, so see you. Au revoir. Bye bye.